to Storybound, where we are diving back into the world of cytonic space pilots fighting for survival of Skyward with Sunreach and ReDawn, two novellas created by Brandon Sanderson and co-written, co-authored by Janci Patterson. The Skyward series has been gifted two new entries, Sunreach and ReDawn. Sunreach is from Freya's perspective, or FM's perspective, and ReDawn focusing on Alanique's, the alien that we encountered in the previous novel that was unconscious at the time. The rest of the crew is here. We do get Rig, Jorgen, and some of the others, and some additional characters, some new introductions, and some that were alluded to in previous novels. However, Spensa is basically absent from these two novellas for good reason. If you read the novels up to this point, these novels do seem to take the place of tying up some loose ends leading up to Cytonic, so Cytonic won't have to do all kind of the heavy lifting of catching people up, where people were, what was going on, while Spensa was out infiltrating the Federation. Speaking of future novels, I just realized Book 4 was announced. Currently titled Defiant, and a third novella is also coming out that will take place between the events of Cytonic and Book 4, called Evershore, and that's awesome. If you're a fan of Skyward, more Skyward. These books do act as kind of a stepping post for some pretty solid character work with Rig, FM, Jorgen, and Alanique. We also learn a little bit more about the Tainix. They are kind of more of a focal point in these two novellas, and I expect them to be kind of moving forward, kind of based on the events that occur within this. Presumably, we will learn even more in Cytonic, which will probably win the record for the most title drops within a book when that launches really, really soon. I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to format this video, or if I wanted it to be kind of multiple videos, one for each book, that sort of thing, but I decided about putting them together, giving kind of my initial thoughts, and how I felt about the co-writing effort here. So we have Brandon Sanderson and Janci Patterson co-authoring. I don't know to what extent this happened, but I'll let you know my thoughts kind of based on what I read and how the book feels when you're reading it. So if you want more content, please like and subscribe. If you haven't already, really appreciate it. Comment down below as well, helps the algorithm, and let's dive into this. With two novellas and a co-writer, how did these short outings into the remaining members of Skyward Flight and our previously unconscious friend Alanique go? The short of it is, I really enjoyed these. I really dug some things in Sunreach, but ReDawn was arguably more interesting to me, and I'll dig into that here in a moment. To start off, Sunreach, we get FM is forced to join a crew called Nightmare Flight. Skyward Flight is kind of in legend at this point now due to Spin's exploit at the end of Skyward. The crew's nervous about being mobilized and the announcement of Spin's return, so things are kind of kicking off at high gear. It's kind of a real kind of hectic, chaotic opener going on in this book, and it's pretty cool. The novel itself is super fun, very straightforward plot, and we get some character progression that could be a bit jarring. If you don't read this novella leading into Cytonic, I'm sure they'll do some catch up in it, but I'm not sure to what extent. But there are some events in here that feel fairly significant, and they do a good amount of fleshing that out, so it doesn't probably feel so jarring when people go to read book 3. Sunreach, I don't call these novellas a must-read, but I do find it provides some very solid character work in here. Sunreach itself feels a little bit of a exposition dump or a catch-up type novel that kind of fills in some gaps in terms of what was happening while Spensa was off at the Federation kind of doing an infiltration mission. These people weren't just sitting around doing nothing. There was quite a bit going on, and it allows you to kind of understand and deal with kind of what's going on, the relationships that are kind of existing here, the dynamics that now exist within these characters, or between these characters within the novellas, and the dynamics for the most part, are awesome. I love the kind of new things. They feel natural, and I'm enjoying it. Do appreciate these novellas for being there to kind of alleviate, hopefully, some of the baggage that would exist of having to kind of catch everybody up in this stuff in Cytonic. So hopefully Cytonic won't be weighed down by that, and we can just kind of dive in and move forward with the story. But Brandon has done a pretty good job of that previously with his novellas. ReDawn, as stated before, focuses on Alanique. What is cool is that we get a bit more insight into her species, their struggles, and their relationships with the Authority. It also paints a really interesting dynamic between a species who has been allied with the Federation, but is still considered as having a military, versus the humans in the DDF who have been actively battling for as long as they can remember, and how they kind of differ from one another and how they kind of perceive one another based on the events within the book. I'll touch light on it in spoilers a bit. However, my biggest question is, how would the partnership with Brandon and Janci Patterson go? Honestly, I think this went almost perfectly. I don't know what percent of what each person did. I'm assuming Janci wrote these novels with an outline from Brandon, and then getting kind of notes. I'm sure she also kind of put her feedback and her spin on kind of what she would like to see from these characters and how she felt about these characters. And all in all, it felt seamless. It was fun. The characters felt the same. The novels felt very similar, and it's just more Skyward. So if you were worried about how this would work, Brandon is somebody who became famous for taking on somebody else's novels and finishing them and co-authoring them. So it's cool that he provided this opportunity to someone else, and I think it worked great. It's a solid YA romp, which would be honestly perfect for the big screen movie, by the way. And if you're a fan of the series, these novellas will definitely be worth your time. Now, let's talk spoilers. Well, this isn't going to be a story recap, but in Sunreach, we essentially open with FM, and probably my favorite scene to visualize, where she's essentially in a dogfight at the battle in the opening, and we find out that her name is actually referring to FM radio, the old school radio system at this point in their world. And we learn she's actually named after the goddess Freya as well. I can't remember if that was detailed in the previous books or not, or if they just called her by her call sign. She pops onto music, some big band music. I was kind of picturing like ska in my head, and the idea of kind of her flying around with this. I was just kind of visualizing what that would look like on the big screen, like in a movie theater, screen TV at your house or whatever. And I think it'd be a super cool scene to kind of see this play out. And the more I think of it, I think this series in general would be arguably more adaptable than some of the other ones. I know people throw out Mistborn and stuff like that all the time. Probably good, but I think Skyward might have some more wider appeal because some of the concepts maybe aren't as weird. During this battle, FM does lose some classmates and fellow pilots during the battle, and things aren't really going that well. We also get Murphy Neer's favorite word as a mass undulating, rippling into the endlessness of space. And we see these are the events that kind of ended Skyward reaching detritus, and then suddenly the massive object, as quickly as it kind of appears, disappears just as quickly as it arrived. We find out humans have learned their kind of sordid history through some machinery that they discovered on the planet. So we get a little bit of explanation there. It doesn't dive into it too deep. We also find out that Jorgen is a Cytonic, or at least has been Cytonic, but has recently discovered his powers and is able to actually locate Taniks with his Cytonic abilities. Alanique wakes up, and her interactions with the DDF, she decides not to trust them and teleports away. And in Sunreach, we are just kind of dealing with catching up with the characters, finding out what was going on with them, what was going on with Jorgen, FM, her relationship. We get kind of a budding romance going on there with Rig, which is pretty cool. I like that, and bringing him back in. We don't get a ton of time with Rig. I think he'd be a pretty interesting character, so I hope we get to spend some more time with him. in Cytonic. But yeah, in ReDawn, we pick up where Alanique teleports away. She goes back to her homeworld, and we see how she's dealing with her failed mission, the dynamics, the political ramifications of what happened there, their inability to steal kind of the hyperdrive technology or learn what the hyper technology is, and her finding out that her homeworld is now trying to ally with the Federation because they weren't able to kind of undercut their technologies and build a proper defense against them. Her faction is very much like the humans. They've been ostracized. It's definitely interesting to see kind of the aliens interacting with human objects and people and learning our customs, poking fun. It was very interesting. And I always love when we see how aliens feel about us as a species, and we get to explore that concept a bit here. A Skyward flight is kind of ordered by Cobb, or not ordered, quote unquote. So they steal ships and actually go and help Alanique, because Alanique comes back for a short period, asks for their help to kind of help save her species from both being captured, enslaved, and the partnership that is kind of brewing between the her species and the Federation. When they get there, it's a super neat dynamic of how kind of a young Skyward flight is perceived as being this crazy veteran military force, and how Alanique has never seen combat outside of kind of a simulator. Alanique is put off as the humans are able to kind of kill without remorse and seem like they're masters of combat, and she's in awe of their abilities, and this was a really cool dynamic, and it was great to see. There was some obvious kind of body snatcher stuff going on in here with some of the dynamics we see, where especially when you see one of the interactions with Cobb, you know something is definitely up there. But I really, really liked ReDawn. I thought ReDawn was the stronger of the two books. It didn't have that kind of catch-up thing going on at the beginning of it, where we're kind of getting reintroduced to the characters, understanding who they are, their dynamics, and where they've been this whole time. So it kind of just flowed a little bit better. Both novellas are definitely strong. Definitely enjoyed both of them. But like I said, the second of the two definitely just kind of was a little bit better, just because it didn't have some of that baggage that I think they're trying to prevent from happening in the next book. If you're a fan of the series, definitely check these out. They're worth your time. They're short, they're great, and it's more Starsight. And we're going to be getting even more Starsight super soon here. Looks like November 23rd. I totally forgot Cytonic was creeping up on us. So as of recording this, just about a week away. But yeah, if you like my content, please like and subscribe. Please comment down below. It helps out with the algorithm and all that fun stuff. So thanks again for watching. And as always, have a good one.